What is Dollar Gujarati?
How do Gujaratis do business?
What kind of businesses can you do in America?
How can you grow your business?
How do you get your first customer?
How can you raise funding?
When should you be frugal?
Can you start a business as an immigrant?
Why is sales important?
Where are all the investors?
Which is the correct model for your startup?
Find these answers and more in Season 2 of Dollar Gujarati.
Season 1 was all about the stories of successful Gujarati entrepreneurs in America. Season 2 is about getting actionable tips from young Gujarati startup founders. Every week, we dive deep into solving one business challenge in a TED Talk style. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our new mini-series, Learning with Y Combinator. In this series, Gujarati Y Combinator founders will take short lessons to teach us something practical that we can use in our business or in our side hustle. You can write into us for specific topics at dollar.gujarati@gmail.com. Today's founder is Ankit Gordhandas. Ankit came to America for a bachelor's in electrical engineering from MIT. He worked for a few years in the biomedical engineering field before starting his company Intersect Labs. Intersect Labs provides predictive analytics for your data using machine learning in 3 simple clicks. Check them out on the link given in the description. Welcome to the show, Ankit. Hi, and what are you going to teach us today?
Awesome. Thanks a lot for having me here. It's a pleasure talking to you and to you, everyone else who may be listening in. I think one of the biggest questions I had as an engineer when I started the company was how to acquire early customers. And so I think, if you think that's an appropriate topic to discuss here, I think the Ankit from 2 years ago would definitely have appreciated that.
Yeah, let's do that. How to acquire our first customers.
Yeah, so I'll start with a little bit of our journey and why I started Intersect Labs. And I can try to parse out some lessons I learned along the way. So like you mentioned, I'd been an engineer before. I started consulting for a few small companies to help them do data science and machine learning. And along the way, I realized that there was a lot of companies with really talented folks who really knew their business, who understood their data, but relied on someone like me to convert their historical data into predictions. And so that was a big aha moment for me that, hey, there might be a market for this kind of a product that would allow people who have the domain expertise, but not necessarily the math or the programming background, to convert their historical data into predictions. And so right off the bat, the big learning for me was, I would have been my own customer, which was great. But beyond that, I think the biggest lesson that I learned was that I just talked to people. I would talk to everyone and anyone. My parents are doctors in India. They have nothing to do with machine learning. And yet I talked to them. I said, hey, I'm starting this company. And what do you think? Is this useful? And obviously, because they're my parents, oh yeah, great idea. This sounds amazing. But other people were more frank, right? And that was useful because I think it's almost necessary to find some of the earliest customers from within your network. And that's what I did as well. So our first user ended up being a data analyst at a company. So again, as I was talking to a lot of people, I ran into the CTO at an event and he asked me what I'd been on this product. Is there anyone on your team who would find this useful? The next night I gave him a demo over Zoom. And then 2 days later, I was giving a demo to a data analyst on the team who said she would love to start using it. And similarly, I reached out to a data analyst friend of mine from college who I hadn't spoken to in 7-8 years by then. I said, hey, look, I didn't even know you were a data analyst, but I saw on Facebook you are one, and I'd love to get you on the phone, show you something I'm working on. And maybe I'll, if you're interested, I'll buy you an Amazon gift card. And she referred me to the head of data science at her company. The head of data science then ended up referring me to another team, and they've been our customer for a year and a half now. Similarly, other customers came that way. We found a bunch of customers through Y Combinator, obviously. But the moral of the story, I think, it all boils down to the fact that early on, it doesn't have to be scalable, right? Some founders often get into the trap of thinking, oh, I need to get my customers through outbound email or through cold outreach or through Facebook ads, and because those are scalable channels. And truth be told, I mean, nothing that any startup does is scalable early on. And for anyone listening in, I definitely refer you to my favorite essay by Paul Graham, which is Do Things That Don't Scale, in which he talks about how, early on Stripe, for example, arguably one of the most successful YC startups, the founders would just go to their customer's house and set up manually everything on their computer. All right. Obviously, that was not scalable, but it helped them learn a lot. It helped them learn so much that now anyone can go to stripe.com, create an account, and start charging their customers. And Stripe is valued at more than $30 billion. So yeah, I think it's okay to start small. We're still small. We still get a lot of our customers through referrals. We're just starting to see customers come in through inbound or through outbound channels, but at least a plurality of our customers did come in through what we call referrals or warm introductions.
So I had two questions. You
Great.
mentioned that you were yourself your first customer.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've heard that from a few other people as well. How does that help, being your own customer?
Yeah, that helps a lot because multiple things, right? The first way it helps is that if you know what you want, and if you're going to use this, you sort of know what features are necessary, what features are bare minimum, etc. But then the other way it does help is, if you're passionate about it, right, it'll just enable you to push through any obstacles that come your way. Because and that was the thing that kept me going early on. I realized, hey, this is a technical problem, this is a hard problem, but worst case, even if I don't get 100 customers, right? Worst case, I've built something that I'll be able to use, and next time I get a job, I'll be able to show up to the job, and when I have to create a machine learning model, guess what? I'll just put it into my software. And my managers don't have to know that it only takes a few clicks, and I can spend the rest of the time just reading. So yeah, it does help to know your market really well, and the best way to know your market is by being the market.
Second question, you said you started consulting before you left your job. So how did you?
No,
Oh,
I did
after?
not. No. After, yeah, I'd left my job. I was taking a break, and then I was consulting for a few companies.
Okay, so how did you find your first customers who you consulted for?
Yeah, good question. Again, warm introductions and a lot of serendipity. One ended up being a friend of mine who was starting her company, and she needed her help. Second was actually super funny. One of my former colleagues and friend was applying for a job, and I was one of her references. And so her manager or future manager was talking to me for a reference check, and in the process offered me a consulting gig as well. And then she got the job too, of course. So yeah, a lot of serendipity, but again, it boils down to, especially as a consultant, it boils down to just talking to as many people as you can, and then just putting yourself out there.
So you mentioned that you had friends who were data analysts, and that's how you approached them, that, would you like to try my product? Or so you were fortunate that you already had friends in that industry. But what about someone who doesn't have friends? Like, what's the best way for them to find the first customer?
Yeah, good question. I think I would argue that you would know, like, anyone who's looking for early users, not necessarily customers, right? And the key difference between a user and a customer is someone who's going to pay you. I would argue that if you have 200 people on LinkedIn, at least one or two of them loosely fit the profile that you're looking for, right? And you can always start there. And otherwise, friends of friends, right? I forgot to mention, one of our early customers was a friend of a friend.
Yep, that's a good advice.
Awesome. I think this has been really useful. What's your one piece of advice to someone who wants to acquire customers?
Just talk to people. I think that's the number one feedback for advice for almost anything, but especially if you want to acquire customers. Just get out of the building, talk to people. These days it's over Zoom mostly thanks to COVID-19. But yeah, just schedule as many calls as you can. Don't be afraid. The worst thing that can happen is someone will tell you your idea is stupid or they won't talk to you. They're not that terrible things to happen, right? No one's going to penalize you for showing them a bad product. Whatever, you can move on. They can move on.
Right. So, what's the most Gujarati thing about you?
The obvious answer is food, but I think that's too cliche and too common an answer. Little known fact about me, I went to a school called New Era School in Mumbai, which was Gujarati medium up until fourth standard or fourth grade, which means that even to this date, I am fluent in reading and writing Gujarati, and my love for Gujarati literature or Sahitya, as they would call it, is still deep. And that coupled with the fact that I can have long conversations in pure Gujarati without using a single word of English, as long as the conversation is non-technical. I think those are the most good things about me.
Oh, that's nice. All right, Ankit, thank you for coming on our show and helping us learn about customer acquisition. And we wish you all the very best with Intersect Labs and hope you raise some good funding and then hire all of us.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a blast. And something tells me that I actually won't have to hire you. I think, the fact that you are talking to so many people tells me that all of you have a bright future ahead of you.
Thanks.